FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Capitalism made America great. Free markets, innovation, hard work. The building blocks of the American dream. But in the wrong hands, some of those dreams can turn into nightmares. Wall Street's corporate raiders made billions of dollars.
Private equity leaders getting rich at the expense of American workers.
Their greed was only matched by their willingness to do anything to make millions in profits. Nothing was spared, nothing mattered but greed. This film is about one such raider and his firm. Mitt Romney became CEO of Bain Capital the day the company was formed. His mission? To reap massive rewards for himself and his investors.
Mitt Romney, them guys, they don't care who I am.
He's for small businesses. No, he isn't. He's not.
You're going to be on the hit list, you know that.
Romney took foreign seed money from Latin America and began a pattern exploiting dozens of American businesses.
They fire people, they cut benefits, they sell assets.
But okay, let's look deeper. Let's look deeper in his life.
This is the official trailer for the new documentary out about Mitt Romney's time at Bain Capital. And the film is When Mitt Came to Town. It sounds very ominous, doesn't it? Joining me right now on the phone is Rick Tyler, who is a former aide with Newt Gingrich, former head of communications for Newt Gingrich. And he works with the super PAC that came out with When Mitt Came to Town. Rick, first of all, good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, Dana, I feel like I'm talking to an American folk here. I'm so glad to be with you.
Oh, gosh. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. I know you've been slammed since this came out. I have to ask you, and this is the question that I've been mulling over all day. Out of all of the issues, because when I look at Mitt Romney's record, his time as governor of Massachusetts, the fact that he left this, nearly $1 billion budget deficit to his successor, all of the different tax increases that he levied, well, he called them fees, but we all know that they're tax increases on Massachusetts residents, the socialized health care. Out of everything that Mitt Romney has in his record, why did you choose to focus on Bain Capital?
Well, I have a stack of opposition research against Mitt Romney, everything from taxpayer-funded abortions to the thing that you mentioned to onerous gun regulations because he's anti-gun. So I'm calling you from the Live Free or Die state. The primary is here tomorrow, and down by the border, they should have a sign when you go into Massachusetts, prepare to surrender your health care, your paycheck, and your firearms. But Mitt Romney, no one has anything on Bain Capital. I mean, there was just nothing on Bain Capital, and so few reporters had done very much on Bain Capital. Michael Kranish of the Boston Globe, I'll give him credit. He did a lot on Bain Capital, but the only thing people know about Bain Capital is what Mitt Romney tells them. And the central message of his campaign is, I'm from the private sector. I created jobs. I know how to create jobs. Well, that turns out to be utterly false. And this this film is a testimony of 4 case studies, 4 companies that Mitt Romney raided, and it's emblematic of Romney in the way he acted as a vulture, going around the country, ravaging companies and picking them apart, taking their assets, and sending their jobs overseas. So when Romney says, gee, wonder where all the manufacturing jobs have gone, Mitt Romney only has to look in the mirror.
Now, one of the things that you had said to a mutual friend of ours, Steve Bannon, is that Mitt Romney gives a bad name to capitalists. What makes you decide? What drove you to the conclusion that he gives a bad name to capitalists? I mean, obviously, some of the stuff that you had mentioned.
Well, you heard in that trailer that you played, we open up the film talking about the virtues of capitalism. Capitalism is a wonderful system. It's the only system that allows people to be free and to innovate and to keep the rewards of their own fruits of their own labels. That's a biblical principle. And so we believe in capitalism. We're 4% of the world's population. We create more than 25% of the world's wealth. We are astonishingly wealthy. It's because we have a system that has allowed us to unleash the American spirit. And so what we do is we offer, if you have a good idea and you want to offer a product or service, people will bless you with their dollars because they want that product or service more than they want their dollars, which represents their labor. And so you have to, in the competitive market, continue to innovate and offer a good product or a good service. And then you build and create jobs. That is the sense of capitalism that most Americans understand. So they understand that Steve Jobs built Apple from his garage. They understand what Jack Welch did at GE. They understand what Bernie Marcus did at Home Depot. But they have a hard time understanding how Mitt Romney would take an existing company and see that there was more money by liquidating the company, taking their assets, getting rid of their workers or lowering their workers' wages. And in many cases, like GS Steel in South Carolina, he cut the workers' pensions, yet Bain Capital made tens of millions, I think over $100 million on that deal. Now, when someone has worked their life and they lose part of their pension, and Bain Capital and its investors reap tens of millions of dollars, that's not a kind of capitalism that I'm going to defend.
So corporate raiding, I mean, really the question becomes, is corporate raiding capitalism?
Well, it's predatory. It's predatory corporate mugging. And look, it's legal, okay? It's not ethical in my view, and it's not moral, but it's legal. Now, and there are people who do it, and they make a fine living. My issue here is that Mitt Romney is running as someone who has said himself, I'm running because I have experience in the private sector in job creation. That is not true. And so he has based his whole campaign on this idea that he knows how to create jobs. And the evidence is against it. He doesn't know how to create jobs. He's certainly very good at destroying them.
Well, there's the quote that he gave during the debate, or several different times, and in a couple of different interviews, that during his time at Bain Capital, he'd created 10,000 jobs, and the question was, well, then how are you counting that? And I know that's something that a lot of people are disputing. But because there have been some people out there, and I know you're aware of them, that they really dislike Mitt Romney, and they see like attacks on Bain, and I realized that there was one particular, it was a union shop one of the steel mills, in fact, that Bain Capital took over, and they had to rely on federal money in order to offset the deficit with the pensions, whereas that
was GS Steel in South Carolina.
Yeah, and to me, to attack that seems completely credible because they received a bailout.
Correct.
A bailout.
That's right. That means taxpayer money, taxpayer dollars essentially paid Bain's profits.
Exactly, and that to me definitely wail on that is because that's huge. You're essentially you run up that against Barack Obama in a general election, and you're immediately taking away one of the biggest arrows in your quiver. One of the things that I've heard, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. I do. I hear individuals that say, well, wait a minute, would this just be, they view this as an attack on capitalism because capitalism has winners and losers. Now, how do you respond to individuals who think that maybe the film went too far?
Well, capitalism does have winners and losers, and companies that don't keep up eventually lose their job. But this isn't really like that. This isn't like Mitt Romney went around the country and tried to find good companies and build them. He tried to find companies that were vulnerable to attack and took them over and liquidated their assets. Let's take AMAC in Marianna, Florida. Right. They made high quality commercial washers, and when they went in there, the first thing they did is started to cheapen the product, lower the prices, because they were driven by the analytical data that says if we can lower the prices, then they cut the wages of the workers, and then they put. But that's and people do that. They say we got to be more competitive, we got to lower wages, we got to do this. But they did worse than that. They saddled these companies like Unimac of Florida, or KB Toys was a big national chain, and they saddled them with debt while at the same time extracting obscene management fees. And so they put these companies under enormous debt, so they have no ability to survive. And then, of course, when they go under, they liquidate them and they take their property assets and their pensions, and they cash out. And they say, hey, we made a good investment for their good return on their investment. And yes, they did. All their investors profited handsomely.
Right.
But at what cost? Thousands of jobs were lost, and many of them were shipped overseas. That's not the kind of capitalism I think that people are defending. I'll defend capitalism, free markets, and free enterprise all day long. This is something quite different. Even Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about this after this.
He's a financier.
Right.
And he's more like a mugger.
Right. Well, we're coming up on a hard break. Hang on with me, and we'll talk more about this after this break. We're talking with Rick Tyler. He is with the Super PAC, just out with a brand new film, the new documentary everybody's talking about, involving Mitt Romney and his time at Bain. And the film is called When Mitt Came to Town. Back more with Rick. Keep it here.